there was this general feeling that this wasn't a real European interest. This was America's war, and when America decided to put an end to it, everyone else went along.
And was it worth it when we've seen the absolute desperation?
Very hard to say. I mean, I have friends, you have friends who've served in the armed forces. I have Afghan friends, I have NGO friends who've spent the last 20 years trying to build something. Now, maybe it was a fantasy, but there's a whole generation of young Afghans, particularly in the cities, girls and boys, who've been educated, who have dreams, who use the internet. I think it's a very different country now than it was 20 years ago. And I think the Taliban, one way or another, will have to come to terms with that. And that's the hope. I don't think they can impose the kind of cruel gender-based law they claim to be Islamic law on the whole country now in the way they did 20 years ago. And the other big risk, of course, is they never broke with Al-Qaeda, and the risk is that Al-Qaeda, Daesh, these groups will again find a place where they can regenerate. And I think the Taliban must understand that is the one thing that could bring Britain and America and others back to Afghanistan to hurt them again if they allow that to happen.
And finally, Stephen, before we let you go, there are lots of comparisons being made between this and the US exit from Vietnam, and this being Biden's Vietnam. Do you think that's a fair comparison? You know, the images of US military jets leaving Kabul airport certainly resonate and look very familiar to those last helicopters that we saw leaving Saigon in the 60s.
Well, I think it's an inevitable comparison. Vietnam was a different kind of war, and the South Vietnamese did fight for 2.5 years. So it was really just the embassy, that left in April '75 when the North Vietnamese finally took Saigon. This is rather different. I mean, what worries me, frankly, this is a little bit more like the fall of Phnom Penh, because then you had Khmer Rouge kids from the countryside. The whole Cambodian government had disappeared, had fallen apart. They came into Phnom Penh, they came into the big city, and they looked around, and for 2 or 3 days, everything was very polite, and then things changed radically. This is the part that actually worries me the most.
Excellent stuff. Thank you, Steve Erlanger from the New York Times there. Thank you.